Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city sand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And the New York Mets are on a 2-game losing streak, losing back-to-back game against the lowly Washington Nationals as they go to Atlanta and play in the House of Horrors, Truist Park, against the Atlanta Braves, struggling, falling, choking, whatever you want to call it, they're doing right now as the New York Mets are just 7 games over 500. On the verge of a possibility tonight could be the day the Mets officially are out of the playoffs, even though there's more games to go, but they could be the first time this year the Mets could actually be out of a playoff spot. If the Mets lose and the Reds win, the Mets will be a half a game out of a wild card spot, and that would be the first time this year in game 128 of the season, and that is frustrating within itself because of the way they played. But it's not just about the way they played. It is about how they look from the naked eye of no sense of urgency at all. And I think that's the scariest thing that I worry about more than just not winning ball games. Because you can lose ball games. You can have stretches of a year where you just look like a bad team. And I want to give a shout out to my co-host Chris because he was at those games in Washington the last couple of days, and he even said from his point of view at the game, it felt like there wasn't a sense of urgency. And I felt the same way, the way it just looked on TV. So I can imagine how it looked and felt at the game. And I'm really thinking that the sense of urgency is not there for a lot of the guys on this team. I feel like the manager has been put in a terrible spot where I don't think he can do anything to fix it, and he's managing the team. I think the other day when he talked about, he needs the starter to go deeper into games, he goes, it starts with the starters. And he keeps on saying that a lot in post games that the Mets lose. And I feel like it's a direct shot or an indirect shot at David Stearns. I'm thinking, and this is no confirmation or anything, that Stearns and Mendoza are not on the same page of what they believe needs to happen when it comes to the pitching, right? Brandon Sproat should have been up here weeks ago. Nolan McLean should have been here weeks ago. As I said, and many said the same thing, June should have been the time these kids came up, right? I don't see the difference between them pitching 70 innings in AAA or 100 innings in AAA. If you believe they're good, then believe in them. They could help your team, or at least we hope they can help your team. But you had an opportunity a month before the trade deadline, a month and a half before the trade deadline, to bring these kids up so you have a better idea of what you need at the deadline, number one. And number two, you help your team that is desperately in need of starting pitching because of injuries, because of the lack of performances, a lack of innings that your starting rotation has not given you, and you failed that aspect of doing what you need to do to evaluate these kids. Now, I'm not big on evaluating at the major league level, but when you have a clear need on your major league roster and you're not making big trades for a starter in June, you had an opportunity to bring at least one of these guys up, but you could have brought up two because that's how much we were lacking in a rotation based on injuries, especially because of injuries. You could have brought them up, and now you're kind of running around with the chicken with the head cut off with Nolan McLean. Now everybody's asking every single day, like, and this is the other part about no sense of urgency. You got 35 games to go. Like, there's not much time to continue to fall here. Like, you can't get behind to the point where Brandon Sproat might not come up for another week. That's another 7 games here. We got 13 games to go in a row. Like, there's no time to wait here. By the end of this stretch of games with no off days, we're going to be, we're going to have 22 games left by the time we have our off day on September 4th. Like, that is a problem within itself. And the sense of urgency, I think, trickles down from the top. I think David Stearns shows no sense of urgency, clearly, because Sproat still hasn't been, marked as the day he'll make his MLB debut. But even that is putting so much pressure on these kids to perform. And I don't think David Stearns thinks of it that way. He believes that if they're ready, they're ready. But you did not need to put this much pressure on these kids because everybody expects them to be a savior, to be the guy, like, all right, they're going to turn this rotation around. And I said this before. I don't care if you bring Nolan McLean up here. I don't care if you bring Brandon Sproat up here. If Kodai Senga and Minaya pitch the way they pitched the last 2 nights, it does not matter what those kids do. And it's unfortunate because they can pitch well. And if you don't make the playoffs, what is Stearns going to say? Well, at least we saw the young kids. If he says that, I might blow my mind. I might freak the hell out. There's not enough urgency from the man up top and with David Stearns. And I think Mendoza and Stearns are not on the same page with this. I think that Stearns did a terrible job giving Mendoza what he needs on an everyday basis to manage better. I don't think he believes in this rotation. I don't think he believes in the bullpen prior to the trade deadline. At this point, look, Stearns did a good job with the bullpen. You don't know until these guys are here how they're going to pitch for your team. So you just don't know that. You just don't know that. And I'm not blaming David Stearns for the bullpen additions. I'm blaming the bullpen guys that are throwing the ball. And I said that, right? But I am blaming him for Cedric Mullins. I am blaming him for no starting pitching additions at the trade deadline. And even with that, I might have accepted not doing anything starter-wise at the deadline if Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat were up here in June. Because that would have been, we would have had a month and a half to see what these guys got. If they're good, great, they're part of this rotation. But now it's like Nolan McLean only pitched, 5 days ago? Like, this is not like, and we have no idea how he's going to pitch. Now, this is a whole different ballgame, and they were talking about it on WFAN before I went live. The fact that we don't know what we're going to expect in game 2 of Nolan McLean's career and start for Nolan McLean's career, right? We saw the poise. We saw his stuff. Everything is there. But when you have your MLB debut, there's not a book on you. Teams haven't seen you. And again, Atlanta hasn't seen Nolan McLean, but they have a book on him now. They know what he throws. They know his problem in his first MLB debut was walks. He had 4 walks, which is his average in the minors, at least in AAA. Now they know what he throws. They've seen it on tape. This is a whole different ballgame. The adrenaline is not pumping as much, even though, he'll still be excited, but it's not your MLB debut. You're not at home. You're in a hostile environment. This is your second start of your career. We have no idea what we're going to get out of Nolan McLean. Now, I think he looks very confident on the mound, and that's a good start. But can that last considering the fact that your MLB debut, it seemed like everything went right for him, right? That backhanded play that turned into a double play, like that backhand was luck. He put his glove out, it hit his glove. He made a great throw to second base to turn a double play, but a lot has to happen. And a lot did happen for him in the right way in his MLB debut. So this is not a detriment to Nolan McLean at all. It's just facts are facts, right? This is why Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga starts were so important leading up to Nolan McLean starting a series against the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. Because one, you face the Nationals. That I don't care who's pitching for you. You need to beat that team. And you failed to do that. You failed to win a series. And sweep would have been obviously great. We all wanted that. But win 2 out of 3. You can't have back-to-back performances of your top 2 guys pitching like crap. And then you have to worry about the offense, who's been fine over the last 2.5 weeks, who've been pretty good, who has to fight back in Kodai Senga's start and give Sean Manaea a 3-0 lead, and they blow it. And Kodai Senga basically, from the jump, had the Mets behind. And Sean Manaea had a 3-0 lead going into the 5th inning. Like, you're in the middle of this game with a 3-0 lead, and you fell apart. And this has been constant for the last month, that the Mets continue to blow lead after lead after lead. If it's not the rotation leads it to the bullpen blows it. Like, everything has gone wrong that can go wrong. And that's concerning within itself. But the New York Mets need to figure it out. I don't care how they do it. Like, somebody needs to step up, have a conversation in this clubhouse and say, listen, guys, what are we doing here? It looks like we're going through the motions here. And if they don't make the playoffs, somebody has to pay. And you know what? I will blame the players, right? They're on this field. They come up in spots where they have opportunities. A lot of the lineup, a lot of the rotations, they have opportunities to set the tone, and they don't. So you're going to blame the players first and foremost. But the holes were very obvious on this team from the get-go. It always felt like the bullpen was going to be okay, but you always need bullpen at the deadline. Like that's not no matter if the injuries happened or the bullpen wasn't good, you're always gonna look for bullpen help. Now, you probably didn't think you needed 3 bullpen arms considering the injuries we had and the lack of performances in the bullpen, but you would think you need 1 or 2 guys in the bullpen because that's what you seem to need every trade deadline. But nobody expected you were trying to look for a bat in this lineup. So that was another thing added. And then when you start the year with question marks, which I felt the rotation always was, and Dallas should have been priority number 1, faster, more than multiple bullpen arms and center fielder. I think that was going to be the downgrade of this team, and it has been for the last 2.5 months. It has been the pitching that has been the biggest problem. Even with the offense not playing to their caliber all season, they can still put up runs. They could put up 9 runs one game. They put up 10 runs one game. Yeah, a lot of times they weren't scoring, but they were still scoring runs. If you go back, right, we were winning a lot of low-scoring games. The pitching was really good. But people forgot that when we're losing low-scoring games now, when we're losing close games now, which is interesting because nobody cared about the low-scoring games when we were winning or the close games when we were winning back in April and May. But now everybody cares about losing the 2-1 games, the 3-2 games, the 4-3 games. We've been losing a lot of those games. And now we're losing a lot of games that we're ahead in these games, and the pitching cannot hold it. Once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to the channel. We got Mets pregame here on the channel and on X. We're in Atlanta now, where the Braves actually been playing well. Now they're done. They're not making the playoffs, but they could definitely be spoilers. And after we beat them last year in the second to last game of the year to make the playoffs in that doubleheader, they want payback. They want to bury us. They want to embarrass us. And you know what? The Braves had the Mets number this year. And, until that game last year, it kind of was, same old. We can't win at Truist Park. It's the House of Horrors. It's our kryptonite. And they want to bury us. because I truly believe this. I know there's 35 games to go. I know a lot can happen within those month and a half of games. I truly believe if the Mets lose 2 out of 3 against Atlanta, I think they're in trouble. I truly think they're in trouble. You can't have a 2-4 road trip and everything's okay. And think we're going to turn this around. Coming home to Philly, coming home to face Philly, and Philly's waiting to bury us. Like, they can put the nail in the coffin in the division if they take 2 out of 3. Because if we lose 2 out of 3 against Atlanta and Philly comes in knowing that they could put that final nail in the coffin, kind of cement their division title, it's kind of like, well, hopefully the Reds are losing because the Mets aren't helping themselves. Like, the only saving grace is if the Reds fall apart too. And they've been playing better, not much better than the Mets, but they've been playing better than the Mets. And by the time we get into the, that Cincinnati series, what is September 5th, if I'm not mistaken, we might be out of the playoffs. We might be chasing the Reds. Now, you hope that's not the case, but this team has given you no signs that they're going to go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak because that's what they kind of need. They were on the verge of that prior to, game 2 of the National Series, but they fell apart again. No matter what button Mendoza pushed, nothing was working. And it's hard to blame the manager in situations where these guys are starting the game pretty well. And then when you get to that middle part of the game again, they do the same exact thing. They fall apart. The pitching gives up leads, and then the lineup forgets how to hit after the 5th inning. And it's a problem. It's a big, big problem. And we continue to see it time after time, game after game. And nothing has changed. And that's why you go back to the sense of urgency that you don't see from anybody. And if you notice during the post game, Mendoza is getting angrier and angrier and angrier. He is starting to tell, it's like somebody gave him truth serum, and he's basically throwing Stearns under the bus. And he should, to be quite honest with you. Mendoza has blame as well. But it's very hard when you have the roster you have, and you got kids that all everybody talks about. Like, there's not a day you go on X and there's not a highlight of these pitchers. That is frustrating to a manager, knowing that you have to throw Clay Holmes out there, knowing that you have to throw a very subpar Sean Manaea, who I already said this from the get-go. I said this on opening day in Houston, that, a lot of people were talking about, hey, keep it going and, stay above water until Sean Manaea comes back. And I laughed at that because we didn't even know about the loose bodies in his elbow. It was only about the oblique. But I truly think these loose bodies in his elbow are causing him to have issues when he pitches. Not saying that he's in tremendous amount of pain, but I think it affects the way he throws. Like, he lost 1 to 2 miles an hour off his fastball from last year. I guarantee you that has something to do with the loose bodies in his elbow. Like, that fastball he was throwing 93, 94, occasionally 95. He's throwing 91, 92 consistently. And he was blowing people by last year on that high fastball. You know how many high fastballs they're taking and they're not swinging at? So what is he going to do? He's going to come more into the zone, and then he gets beat and he gets hit hard because he's not throwing hard. I truly believe that. And to have this Manaea as like a guy that's going to, wait until we get Manaea back. Like, that is such a David Stearns mentality. It's so annoying. Like, addition at the deadline that you just get somebody back. First off, Manaea is not Jacob deGrom. Manaea probably isn't, I never considered him an ace. I could say you could have considered him a number 2, but even that's a stretch, right? When you haven't been good in 5 years and finally you've had a year in your career that you haven't had in probably 4 or 5 years, I don't expect you to continue that. I just don't, especially when you're over the age of 30. Like, when do you become an ace after 32 years old? I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And to have people, and again, this is the propaganda that Stearns loves to spill out there, and people fall for it. I'm telling you, the Mets are run like a communist country. I swear to God. He throws shit out there. He can't wait to get it to the media right after the deadline. He spills everything he wants the fans to hear just to shut you guys up and shut us up. And it's so obvious, and people fell for it. People fell for the lack of actual good starters additions in the offseason with the Griffin Cannons, with the Clay Holmes, with the Frankie Montas. Like, because he wasn't willing to sign better pitchers, and there was better pitchers out there, right? Obviously, Quintana was better than Montas. I think we all felt like Quintana was a guy that could be a stabilizer in a rotation. He was last year, especially late in the season. He was a stabilizer. And we don't have a stabilizer. We don't even have a guy that we can count on saying, all right, you got to be the stopper. You need a stopper in this rotation, and you need a stabilizer. The stopper is to stop losing streaks. Right? That's usually your ace or one of your better pitches in your rotation that you are confident is going to stop a losing streak. Your stabilizer is a guy that comes in, is not going to be great. He's probably in the back end of your rotation, but you know what? He'll give you innings when needed. Even if he's not pitching great, he'll give you those innings desperately needed. We don't have any of that. David Peterson does it, but when you have to do it the entire season without anybody stepping up, not only does David Peterson have to be a stopper, he also has to give you length, and he has to also pitch great because nobody else is doing that in that rotation. That's a problem within itself. And that is something where David Stearns completely failed, and he should have known that Clay Holmes was going to break down. But his hopes were Kodai Senga was going to be an ace. He expected Shomanai to come back and be what he was last year. That's a lot of hope. Hope doesn't win you games. Hope doesn't win you championships. Actual talent does. And to fall for Kodai Senga and the lack of performances he's given us over 2 years. Like, nobody likes to bring up the past, but everybody loves to bring up the 2023 Kodai Senga. Like, that is not him anymore. He's 2 years older. He's constantly injured since that season, and he's not the same. And they have a lot of book on Kodai Senga, and it's obvious he has no idea what to do on the mound when that ghost fork is not swung at outside the zone. He looks like a lost puppy on the mound when they're not swinging at that pitch, because the only saving grace he has is throwing that fastball over the plate, because he gets deep into counts, a lot of counts, because they're not swinging at that ghost fork. It's his out pitch, but when they're not swinging at it, you end up getting behind in counts. You got to come with the fastball, and he's been getting killed by that pitch. They're not swinging at any of his off-speed or breaking ball pitches, and it's a huge problem because his breaking ball and off-speed pitches, along with his ghost fork, the majority of those pitchers are thrown outside the zone. It's about a 77% outside the zone rate. That is way too much for a guy who has a very straight fastball. I don't care how hard you throw. You got a very straight fastball. When they're looking for that pitch, and that's the only pitch you usually throw in the strike zone, they're going to look for that. And that is where Kodai Senga has been a totally different pitcher than 2023. But here's the issue with that. Nobody had a book on him coming out of Japan. It took him a year to figure that out, and he didn't pitch last year. So they were, not only was he injured, coming back from injury, but now they have a book on him in 2025. So they know what's coming. They obviously see the spray chart of his pitches. When the majority of your ghost forks and your off-speed breaking ball pitches are outside the zone, what are you going to do? You're going to make sure you do the best you can to not swing at those pitchers and wait for that fastball. And that is where I think Kodai Senga has completely kind of fooled everybody. And remember when we were talking about Mark Vientos and guys that are not adjusting at the plate? Like, now there's a book on you. They're not throwing you fastballs. They're throwing you a ton of breaking ball off-speed pitches until you hit it and start to hit it consistently. They're not going to change it up. The same thing goes for hitters when it comes to pitchers. If you're not changing up the way you pitch and maybe throw more fastballs so you can set up your out pitch, get ahead in counts. How many times have you seen Kodai Senga throwing off-speed breaking ball pitches in the start of that bat, just so he can try to, get that fastball and sneak a fastball by them, but he can't throw it for strikes. Like, he can't throw his breaking ball and off-speed pitches for strikes consistently And even if he tries to, it doesn't feel like he can. So he's in a terrible spot. And it's hurting his team tremendously, along with Sean Manaea, who finally threw 91 pitches, but pitched like shit anyway. So we're back to square one with this rotation. And now every day somebody's saying, hey, well, when's Brandon Sproat pitching? Like, what are we waiting for here? His time in the rotation in the minors is coming up. I think it's like 2 days away. Like, there's no guarantee he's going to pitch in this Atlanta series. What are you going to wait? Throw him against the Phillies in a huge series to maybe save your season? This is what we're going to do? Put all the pressure on the kids, and then at the end of the year when you don't make the playoffs, David Stern's like, well, what did you want me to do? I brought up the kids, right? So he's going to make you fall for the nonsense of how, well, I brought up the prospects. And then there's going to be a lot of Met fans that believe in that nonsense. I just don't understand the logic. Your team needed help a few months ago. You weren't willing to bring them up. Like, if you thought they were good, they're going to be good. They don't need 100 innings under their belt to tell you that they're good. If you believe in them that much that you weren't willing to pay a big-time starter in the offseason or make a trade deadline acquisitions, they should have been up here the day of the trade deadline when David Stearns could not wait to get on TV 30 minutes after the deadline and talk about the prospects and talk about the pitchers that might be coming back in McGill, in Blackburn, and blah, 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 and all that nonsense, just to spill his little propaganda scheme against the fans just to make you feel a little bit better, when it was obviously throwing the blindfold over your eyes in what was a failure of a deadline. And he didn't do it. I mean, Nolan McLean just got here 6 days ago. Like, it was right around my birthday, about 6-7 days ago. The deadline was almost 3 weeks ago. Like, that's ridiculous. Nolan McLean should have been on start number 3 at the very least. And this is where I just don't understand. And Truman, everything I'm saying about the Stearns denier thing, am I wrong? Right? I don't like his pitching. I don't like his idea of pitching philosophy. Too many people think it's a good idea. Oh, let's not give long-term deals to pitchers because it's a high risk. We all know it's a high risk. But when you go the cheap route with pitching, who accepts? What good pitcher accepts short-term deals for less money than you would go to a better pitcher? Mediocre pitchers, slightly above average and average or below average pitchers, or guys you're trying to change into a starter that was a relief pitcher. That is the players that take short-term deals. Framber Valdez, you think he's taking a 3-year deal? No, he's going to get 5 or 6 year deal. You think David Stearns is doing that? Absolutely not. Right? Skubal, it might be the only saving grace. But you really think David Stearns is going to spend that money in those years when all he's going to talk about in the offseason, well, we got Nolan McLean, we got Brandon Sproat, we got Jonah Tong, we still got Manaea, we still got Kodai Senga, we still got Clay Holmes, we still got Frankie Montas. That's the shit he's going to spill you. So any possibility of getting a big-time starter at the deadline is going to rely on what we already have internally. And maybe one of these kids are legit and become a star and become a top pitcher. And I'm not talking about Jacob deGrom level. I'm talking about a really damn good pitcher that you could say, this is our ace. But we just assume, and it's not assuming, it's hope at this point, that multiple kids turn out to be really good starters. Because if they're not, and you got a couple of more bunch of 4 or 5s, you're in trouble. Especially if you don't do anything at the deadline to obtain a top line starter. Because next year, I am not considering Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong a top-line starter until they prove it. And even if they come up now and pitch 3 or 4 more starts, let's say the Mets don't make the playoffs, so you're going to see him around 4, 5, maybe 6 times by the end of the year, like Nolan McLean. You might see 4 starts from Brandon Sproat. That's not enough sample size to tell me that this kid's going to be good. So now we're going into another season of hope. When you got Brandon Nimmo another year older, Lindor another year older, possibility of Alonso not being on this team. You still don't have a third baseman because there's still question marks at third base. We don't know what we're doing with Jeff McNeil. Now you got other top prospects in Jet Williams, in Ryan Clifford that are going to be knocking on the door. And where are these kids playing? So we're going to have a ton of question marks. And oh, by the way, half of our bullpen are free agents and possibility of Diaz opting out. So we have to worry about that shit too. So you're going to have to worry about a rotation that is in shambles and major question marks once again. You're going to have to sign about 4, 5, 6 bullpen arms because everybody's a free agent because you don't give anybody more than a 1-year deal. So your bullpen is kind of in flux every year. And this is the situation that you're in. You shouldn't be having this problem when you are in a major market. You shouldn't be in shambles and constantly changing over a line. Like, good teams don't make massive changes. Teams that are consistently good don't make massive changes year after year. You might make one big addition, but you don't make massive changes. There can be massive changes in the rotation. There can be massive changes in the bullpen. There can be massive changes in this lineup. We could be talking about no Alonso, no Diaz. Like, that's massive change. For somebody that says sustained success, you can't change over the lineup a lot and expect people to say, well, the sustained success, you're changing a lineup, you're changing the roster every year, like a lot. Like, this roster is not even going to be close to what it looks like next year. That's scary. Yeah, Truman, 7, 8, and 9 is a waste of an inning. But again, 7, 8, around 8 and 9 around baseball is exactly what you get in almost every team. Probably most of them, if not all of them. So I'm not blaming 7, 8 to 9. See, this is again what the Mets love to hear. They love the Met fans saying, "Let me blame Torrens. Let me blame Mullins. Let me blame Tyrone Taylor." Why? Why are you blaming guys you know that are not good? We know their track record. We see their numbers. We know they're not good. So to put the blame on them is idiotic. Do you know why Tyrone Taylor, you know why Cedric Mullins, Luis Torrens, Hayden Sanger all came up with the chance of, getting runs on the board for the Mets? Was because 1 through 6 didn't do their job. That's why. So don't blame 7, 8, and 9. We know who are good and who are bad. We know Tyrone Taylor sucks at the plate. Cedric Mullins was never going to be a deal breaker. I didn't mind that trade, but we know he wasn't going to be a difference maker. Hayden Sanger, Luis Torrens, they're backup catchers. Sanger's a minor league catcher. Luis Torrens is a backup catcher. What are we expecting from these guys? These guys are 200, 210, 215, 220 hitters. You're going to get that. Because if they weren't 215, 220 hitters, they would be, especially Sanger, especially Luis Torrens and Tyrone Taylor. If these guys were hitting 250, 260, they would be starting, if not for the Mets, somebody else. The reason why they're not starters is because they suck offensively. They wouldn't be here as backups if they were 260 hitters. They wouldn't be here. They would not be here. So I'm not blaming the 7, 8, and 9 guys. Why am I blaming a 4th outfielder? Why am I blaming Cedric Mullins, who I never thought was a game changer? I said it from day one. You can get Cedric Mullins, but it's only to save face so David Stern say, hey, I got you a center fielder, even though it wasn't the best one available. Luis Robert was the guy to get. You were on him basically for 2 months. All we heard is the Mets were in on Luis Robert. We never heard about the Mets being in on Cedric Mullins until the day, a few hours before the deadline was over. Once the White Sox said they're not trading Luis Robert, all of a sudden Cedric Mullins became a topic. So your number one choice that you were fighting to get for 2 months, along with the Phillies, you decided to go the lesser route because for whatever reason you didn't want to trade Vientos and Acuna and AJ Ewan or Santucci. Which at the end of the day, Acuna is in the minors, Vientos is at best, and Ewan isn't one of your top pitching prospects that are going to be Tongs, McLean, or Sprout. Like, it just didn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. We continue to act like it's okay. And then let's blame 7, 8, and 9 because that's exactly what Stearns wants you to blame. Because all he's going to bring up, if this team don't make the playoffs, well, we didn't have Sean Manaea early year. Kodai Senga was injured. Luis Torrens played the majority of the year because of Alvarez being hurt. Tyrone Taylor, we didn't actually – our center fielder was supposed to be Jose Siri. He's going to spill all this goddamn nonsense at you and to make, come up with all these excuses. But at the end of the conversation, he'll say, well, we should have been better. But he'll bring up all those excuses to make you feel a little bit better about yourself in the offseason when he did this. Nobody else. We got Nimmo hurt. Nimmo's hurt. You got Luis Torrens, who has been banged up when he got hit by that bat the other day on the backswing. So Senga's playing 2 days. Senga's playing 2 days in a row. Like, it's so annoying that the same problem persists basically the entire year, right? The bullpen was overused from day one, right? I'm not expecting guys in, I don't care what your name is, to go 7-8 innings in the first month of the season. But when you got into your 7th, 8th start in May, 6th, 7th, 8th start in May, we should be talking about innings. And we were doing it with every goddamn pitcher in this rotation. It's stupid. Like, you didn't want to make your trade for Garrett Crochet, even though you were in discussions with the White Sox, but you weren't willing to give up anything. We found out that, John Duran of the Twins, the Twins wanted one of our top prospects, one of our top 6 prospects, one for Joan Duran. And that's ridiculous. If it was only a 1-for-1, that's a bad job on David Stearns. Because it's not a Ryan Helsley where you gave multiple players for a rental. You could have got John Duran, who could have been an option for you next year because he's on the team control. If Edwin Diaz decides to opt out. And if Edwin Diaz doesn't opt out, you got an 8th and 9 that's probably the best in baseball. Like, it's just stupid. Like, why did Heyman report this in the New York Post the other day? What was it, yesterday or the day before? That the Twins were willing to take one top prospect in their top 10, top 6. It was Jet Williams, it was Carson Benz, it was, any of the 3 top pitching prospects. But those are all a no because you use Ryan Helsley because you gave, 2 or 3 of your top 12 to 15 prospects. So you didn't have to worry about giving any top 8 prospect. And that's everybody's going to give him credit for that. You were able to get one of the top closers in baseball, and Ryan Helsley was a top closer. But I feel like John Duran isn't a guy that is going to be worried about if he pitches the 8th or the 9th. I think Ryan Helsley has a huge problem pitching anywhere but the 9th. And again, can I blame solely on Stearns? No, the player's got to do his job, and Helsley was a good addition. But when you hear that come out, you gave 3 guys, 3 overall players in your system to the Cardinals for Ryan Helsley as a rental when you could have gave one top 6 prospect, one. That's all they wanted, one, to get Joan Duran, and you have him under control for this year and next year. It's like, how do you pass that up? Like, how do you pass that up? I just don't understand it. And again, I don't know if this would have made a difference, right? Getting Joan Duran over Ryan Helsley. I don't know if that was going to make a tremendous difference. But Ryan Helsley blew he's been here 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. All right, let's say 3 weeks. He's blown about 4 games for us, or he'd blown a couple of saves and a couple of leads for us. Could that, that's a difference of 4 or 5 games? Let's say we win 3 out of those 5. We're at 70 wins. So we'll probably be within 3 or 4 games of a division instead of 7. We're probably up in the wild card a few more games than a half a game. Like, that is the minuscule difference of what little moves that weren't made that could have been a difference. Not saying that it could have it's definitely going to happen, but it's a positive because you don't make that move. It's always going to be that what if? What if you got Luis Robert? What if you got Joan Duran instead of Ryan Helsley? What if you went to get a starting pitcher at the deadline instead of seeing Frankie Montas 3 more times after the deadline, or throwing Clay Holmes out there to just give you 5 innings, or seeing Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga struggle every single time since they've been back from the IL. It's gonna be the season of what if, and it shouldn't be talking about what have guys done, because again, at the end of the day, everybody's gonna look at the stats, right? People are gonna say, "Oh, Soto was bad, Nimmo was bad, this and that," but again, people are just gonna run up those stats and say, "Look at the year they have, right? How is it their fault? Look at the starting pitching, how bad it was. Look at the bullpen, who didn't step up before the trade deadline and after the deadline." That's what everybody's gonna talk about. But it's going to be the season of what if this team doesn't make the playoffs. If this team doesn't make the playoffs, there's going to be even more conversation about the what ifs. But let's say the Mets sneak into the playoffs and get knocked out in a wild card round. Like, don't go as far as they did last year. That's a failure. Like, at minimum, you need to get back to the NLCS. The goal should be making the World Series. That should be the next step. Now, winning it is a crapshoot. We all know that. But your goal needed to be, the next step should have been World Series. The minimum needs to be the NLCS, because that's where you were last year. But it's not the case. It is not the case. And unfortunately for all of us, we have to sit here and talk about the what ifs. We have to consistently, too many people are talking about the 7, 8, and 9. Every time these guys come up in the bottom of the order, you should have got somebody better. Who are you getting better that's 7, 8, and 9? Like, it's amazing to me that people talk about these guys like they were supposed to be a difference maker. First, they're backups, and Cedric Mullins was never a difference maker. So blame Stearns for that when it comes to Cedric Mullins. Don't blame Luis Torrens and Tyrone Taylor, who are backups. You can't do that. And because they came up in big spots in multiple games in a row against the Nationals, everybody's putting most of the blame on Taylor and Mullins and Sanger and Luis Torrens. Well, why did they come up in those spots? Because 1 through 6 did not, or at least 4, 5, 6 did not come through. Pete Alonso was 2 for 12 in his series? Mark Vientos, had a home run in game 1, but didn't do nothing else in game 2 or 3. What about Brett Beatty? He had a home run also in game 1. He was fine, but didn't do much in game 2 or 3 of the series against the Nationals. So what happened? You ended up having your 7, 8, and 9 hitters come up in spots where they're not good to begin with as just a ball player offensively. And we're expecting them to come through more often than not. That's a detriment to the better part of your lineup than the guys that are backups. And Cedric Mullins, who is a slightly above average player. This is what everybody's complaining about. It's stupid. Yeah, Truman, I'm still talking about 7, 8, and 9. And you can blame 7, 8, and 9, but that is just you covering the fact that the top 6 guys in the lineup didn't do their job. Well, here's the difference with 7, 8, and 9 last year. Right? What was the difference with 7, 8, and 9? Right? Tyrone Taylor was playing a lot better offensively than last year. He was one of your 7, 8, and 9 guys. Right? It was Alvarez and McNeil most of the time, because Alvarez and McNeil weren't hitting. So they were basically batting 7, 8, and 9 with Tyrone Taylor. But the names sound nice, right? Alvarez and McNeil, your 8 and 9 hitters, that's wonderful. But they were having terrible seasons. So they were basically just as bad as the numbers that these guys are putting up. That's how bad they were. So it wasn't better. It's just you saw those names and be like, okay. But ultimately, it didn't matter because their numbers weren't very good. Now, Tyrone Taylor was much better offensively than last year. So I just don't know. I don't even know what to think about this game, right? Nolan McLean, I couldn't tell you what he's going to do, right? The adrenaline's not pumping like his MLB debut. He's on the road in a hostile environment. The Braves are out for blood. They want payback for last year. They want to destroy. They want to bury the New York Mets. They want everything for the Mets to be at home when the playoffs start, along with the Braves. So the Braves have everything going for them, right? They're not making the playoffs, but they can take somebody with them. And that could be the New York Mets. And they want to do that so badly. And how can I blame them? The Mets are in a free fall. The Braves are playing better as of late. And all signs are looking like the Braves are going to at least take 2 out of 3. Now, things can change rather quickly. If the Mets take 2 out of 3 and look good in this series, we're going to be going into the Philly series coming home, and you're going to have a little bit more confidence, or at least a little bit of more hope that, hey, maybe the Mets actually can turn this around. I don't know. But now we're relying on the second start of his career in Nolan McLean, which, again, he might be able to handle. And that would be great, right? I would love to be talking about tomorrow that Nolan McLean pitched 6 innings today, 2-run ball, and the Mets win. But it doesn't matter. There's always something going wrong in the game for the Mets. If it's not the offense, it's the starters. If it's not the starters, it's the bullpen. At least one thing goes wrong in a game for the New York Mets. Even in their wins, something is like, this guy didn't pitch that well. The offense did good, but this guy didn't pitch that well. The bullpen didn't show up. They gave up 5 runs, but the Mets scored 8. Like, it's continuing to worry why this team consistently can't put it all together. They haven't done it all season, and it's frustrating. And Truman, the Mets don't care about the Braves anymore. They're no longer relevant. Yeah, well, they better worry about them the next 3 days because it's relevant as hell. It has nothing to do with caring about the Braves. They're on your schedule. You play them the next 3 days. You better care about them because the Braves has kicked your ass during this season, and they haven't been good all year. So they better care, because if they don't, the conversations are going to continue about the free fall from the New York Mets. So the lineup today is Lindor, Soto, Marte, Alonso, Vientos, Beatty, Taylor, Mullins, Senger. No Luis Torrens, no Brandon Nimmo. The lineup looks similar than yesterday because it's exactly like yesterday when they didn't do their job. They gave their pitching 3-0 lead, but that's all they did. And they lost 9-3. So Lindor's red hot. Soto has been struggling. Marte has been hot. Alonso has been struggling. Vientos, last 2 games were okay, not great. I don't know where we're going to get. Beatty has been pretty good. Taylor, Mullins, Senger. You just hope that they don't need to be in spots of driving in runs because the top 6 didn't do their job. If the top 6 does their job, we're not going to be talking about Taylor, Mullins, and Senger being up at the plate because it shouldn't come to that. It should not come to that. If they're constantly finding guys on the base paths while they're up, somebody failed in the top 6 of the lineup. So with that said, guys, Mets face the Braves, game 1 of the series, Nolan McLean against Joey Wentz. I don't know what to expect from Nolan McLean from second start out, right? We know he got the stuff. We know he's got the demeanor. We know he's got the confidence. But will it show up when that adrenaline's not pumping in your MLB debut? Can it show up on the road in a place that has been the house of horrors for the New York Mets? The Mets have not played well against the Atlanta Braves this year, even though the Braves have not been good all season. Hopefully, we're talking about a Mets win. If not, we're on a 3-game losing streak. And the free fall does continue. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. No post game today for me, unfortunately, but I will be talking to you tomorrow for a pregame show, and hopefully we're talking about a Mets win and hopefully going for a series win tomorrow. But tonight's the night to start that. And let's see if they can do it, guys. Enjoy the game. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you tomorrow on the pregame show, guys. Have a good night.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud.